is for Hillary Gadi and caution the police service and political leaders to not play dirty, dangerous and opportunistic political games on sensitive case of murder. The police must do everything in their power and must utilize the most advanced forms of investigations to find out what happened and who did what on the disappearance and murder of Hillary Gadi. We assure her that we will find the murderers and will make sure that they are jailed forever. May her soul rest in peace. The EFF calls on men to stop killing and harassing women and children. The levels and extent of gender-based violence in general, South Africa is unacceptably too high. Year on year for the past 5 years or more, South Africa has more than 20,000 murder cases. Despite these cases, murderers are easily given bail by South African criminal justice system, which is evidently corrupted, particularly at magistrates level. South Africa's criminal syndicates have effectively captured the courts and doing as they wish because they know there will be no consequences. The Economic Freedom Fighters held its Central Command team meeting on the 14th and 15th of May 2022. The CCT's main purpose was to receive reports from all structures of the EFF across the length and breadth of South Africa. All ground forces of the EFF are working hard in the recruitment of new EFF members towards the 1 million membership target. Majority of EFF branches are meeting the weekly and monthly target on recruitment of new members, and many revolutionary activists are joining the organization online. We once again call on revolutionary activists and all people in South Africa to join the EFF because it is the only weapon in the hands of the oppressed and exploited black people in South Africa, Africa and the diaspora. The EFF is the only anti-colonial, anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist movement in the entire African continent and the only organization that is truly fighting for the total emancipation of black people. We call on all people in South Africa of all ages and races above the age of 16 to join the EFF in their numbers because it is the only weapon for true liberation. EFF branches will be convening their branch, general and people's assemblies starting from June 2022 in preparations of the provincial people's assemblies which are scheduled to take place before the end of 2022. We call on all members of the EFF to exercise maximum discipline in all assemblies because the people of South Africa do not and will not respect an organization that are defined by infightings. The CCT commends the work of the organization in Ward 3 Pokwane and Ward 5 Mafikeng, where an absolute majority of voters voted for EFF councillors. The EFF will continue to win wards in all provinces because our people have faith in the organization. The CCT commends the work of the EFF Student Command, which is currently the dependable voice of students in all South Africa's universities, University of Technology and TVET colleges. The EFF-SC will be holding its 3rd National Student Assembly in June to elect new leadership and also determine the program of action for students. The CCT observes that under the current government, the conditions of the people of South Africa are getting worse with rising levels of unemployment and poverty. While our people are getting poorer, the current government has surrendered all power to the white capitalist establishment. Government has already declared that it is not its responsibility to create jobs, but the responsibility of white capitalist establishment. In the middle of job losses and rising poverty levels, the prices of necessities are rising, and this includes the prices of fuel and food. Rising fuel and food prices worsen the living condition of our people, and the current government has no willingness and capacity to combat rising prices that worsen the living condition of our people. The current South African government had already started the dangerous and evidently the unsustainable path of privatizing state-owned companies. We condemn and oppose the disposal of South African Airways because its disposal is not justifiable and corrupt. This is absolute. There is absolutely no rationality on selling off an airline for 51 rand to people who are linked and controlled by the white capitalist establishment. We'll do everything in our power to reverse the sale of SAA because it is evident that the state-owned companies will first be made not to function well and thereafter give given for free to the white capitalist establishment. The problems of Eskom and Dinel are part of the current government intention and method of incapacitating state-owned companies so that they can be later handed over to the private sector and friends of the current leadership. The current load shedding and crisis in Eskom are purposefully created to justify the subsequent disposal of Eskom to the greedy white capitalist class. South Africa's energy policy and direction are being directed both domestic and global capitalist interests. This is demonstrated by the current announcement and policy statements by Western powers on the form and transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy South Africa must adopt. What is evident now is that there is no believable plan for a just transition that will secure the work and well-being of communities and workers that depend on the coal for their livelihoods. The activities of the Workers' Day this year have demonstrated that the workers in South Africa do not have any form of organized protection. The workers' rejection of Ramaphosa and ANC must be commended and must be repeated everywhere because the ANC has sold out the workers. The unions that are affiliated to the ruling party are led by careerists and aspirant business people who are controlled by factions in the ruling party and different fractions of the capitalist class. As a movement whose primary interest is the liberation of the working class and the poor people, we are willing not to stand by and watch when the workers are left defenseless because current union leaders are in bed with the ruling party and capitalists. How do you justify that there is no strong union in the food and agricultural sector despite the super exploitation of farm workers? Many sectors of labor, including in the public service, remain defenseless because there are no unions, or the so-called unions are controlled by the ruling class. We as the EFF will do everything possible to ensure that workers are better organized and defended by unions that are not in the pockets of capitalists and government. In the immediate, the EFF labor desk will continue to represent workers in different provinces and regions. Workers who are defenseless must continuously contact the EFF labor desk when they are confronted with difficulties. Workers are at the core of development and humanity, and we carry an obligation as the EFF to defend them with everything in our power. We will not stand by and do nothing when the workers are being super exploited and harassed by a greedy capitalist system. The EFF has observed the continued deterioration of conditions in the continent with no verifiable governmental unit existing for collaboration towards African unity and independence from colonizers. Rwanda has gone on a dark and regrettable path of engaging in slave trade with the United Kingdom by accepting money in exchange for accommodating immigrants and refugees who reside in the UK. The EFF reiterates its position that President Paul Kagame must immediately desist from trading flesh for money to alleviate the immigration issues faced by ultimate colonizers whose theft and war crimes has led to the poverty in Africa and the third world. We have observed closely that disunity of the continent is being sown by the former liberation movements. This is done through blaming other Africans for social, political, and economic ills of our respective societies. The truth remains that it is incapacity of regimes which promise liberation to provide adequate health care, employment, and eradicate poverty which sustains our collective suffering. It is because of the commitment to corruption and war by those tasked with protecting Africans that we see Africans dwindling into recolonization. As such, our people are directed to fight one another instead of fighting those who stole the land, who have monopolized our wealth and continue to underdevelop us through debt. Today, our continent is suffering from dependency on loans from institutions such as International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. These institutions undermine our sovereignty and make African nations compete for the favor of imperialists. They do this by imposing conditionalities that undermine our collective capacity to conduct internal trade and build unified African economy free of borders. The EFF will continue to wage a principal war against imperialist forces, particularly those who undermine our economic, military and political sovereignty, such as France, and we demand the immediate exit of France from African affairs. The EFF will intensify its support for the struggle towards the liberation of the people of Swaziland. We call on all progressive and like-minded democratic forces in Swaziland to unite the demand for democracy and abolition of absolute monarchy in Swaziland. We will continue to unapologetically and fully support all efforts for the democratization of Swaziland. We commend the Russian Federation's government anti-imperialist program against war alliance of NATO. We are unapologetic about our support for the Russian Federation anti-imperialist war, because all the wars that have happened since the end of the USSR have been imperialist wars to further the interest of Western imperialism. We as the EFF are opposed to imperialism. That is why we condemn the presence of American military base in Botswana and oppose the intended establishment of any military base in Zambia. We condemn the Namibian government's arrest of EFF members of parliament and EFF activists who are militantly fighting against the corrupt government of SWAPO. We demand the release of all those who were arrested and caution the Namibian government that will not allow the harassment of EFF leaders anywhere in the African continent. I thank you. Now I will take questions. Let's go. One. Any hand? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Just a question here, Mr. Malema. On the issue of the Takatso Consortium, what are the practical examples and practical steps the EFF is going to take in order to reverse the deal that the Takatso Consortium had in clinching SAA? And lastly, on the issue particularly pertaining to the Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, ANC-NEC member Tony Yengeni has written to the JSC complaining about the conduct of the Chief Justice, particularly pertaining to the state capture report, the final leg of it and the final part, which speaks to how the president of the ANC saved the country when he was elected in Nasrec. Thank you. What's your comment on that?
We are fully behind Mr. Tony Yengeni. We think Chief Justice Zondo is too forward and has got no limit, and we think that he thinks that judges are untouchable. That's why he has given himself a responsibility to enter even the political terrain. What do judges have to do or say with regard to the outcomes of political conferences of political parties? Judges must know the limit, and Zondo has got no limit. For some reason, I personally think that Zondo wished to be a TV presenter during the time of Swimunye. We are one. You remember we used to have presenters who used to introduce programs. I think he thinks he was supposed to be something like that, because he never misses an opportunity to go on TV. We know judges to be speaking through judgments and not to be looking forward to TV interviews. When you get out of court and you speak as a judge, you must know you are no longer my lord. You are just a human being. You are my lord when you are in the court and sitting up there and wearing the robes. When you get out, we are going to engage you like any other person. And therefore, Zondo, when he goes to SABCs for interviews and he speaks about politics, he must know he will be engaged like any other person, because that's what he has invited to himself. Judges are respected for their judgments, not for their political views, not for their political activity. And Zondo is a factionalist that supports Ramaphosa's second term. That's why he saw it necessary for him to put that Ramaphosa's election in the ANC rescued us from where we were, because he's effectively saying, if you don't elect Ramaphosa in this December, we are going to be in trouble. So we support Tony Yengeni fully. The conduct committee of the JSC must make sure that Zondo is disciplined, the same way they did with the Chief Justice when he descended into the terrain of politics. It will not be for the first time. And therefore, Tony Yengeni must be commended for being brave and taking such a bold step against a celebrity wannabe Chief Justice. On the SAA, we have referred the matter to our lawyers, because we believe strongly that we should take this matter to court and make sure that this deal is reversed by our courts. There is no airline that can be sold for 51 rand, not even a single plane or even a single part of a plane is 51 rand. So you can imagine the whole airline being sold for 51 rand. We are being taken for a ride and we are being undermined. And what is concerning is the response of the media of South Africa. There is no declared crisis with that transaction, because even those who are challenging it, they get mentioned there and there and it's done. There is no crisis out there that media has declared that the property of South Africa is being sold to the politically connected. The same thing Dinel is going through is going to be sold for 21 rand. Eskom will be sold for 1 rand. And states' assets are being sold to the friends, and we can't sit back and allow that nonsense. Next. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I think you've touched on a lot of issues that I wanted to ask on. Pelani Pakhadi from Newsroom Africa. On the issue around Limpopo, are you happy since the disbandment of the committees? Are you beginning to see the restructuring of the branches? I do know that your PPA is maybe that PPA may be scheduled for later on in the year, but are you currently happy with that? And even on the million, are you matching quite well towards that particular 1 million, or do you think you might have challenges?
Well, it was supposed to be in the statement, the issue of Limpopo, that we are very happy with the work that is being done by our team that was sent to Limpopo. We are seeing them working the ground up, and they are not in a hurry, and we've made that repetition yesterday in the Central Command team, that Limpopo's team should not rush the province into People's Assembly. It must make sure that there is quality branches with quality membership that joined and paid on its own, and no one should pay for the membership. So we are cruising nicely in Limpopo, and the 1 million membership nationally, we are now sitting at more than 600,000. And we are confident that we are about to hit the target even before December. Next. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Malema, that was from CIC. Regarding the investigations into the murder of Mary Jackie, we've seen some of the emergence of details around some Roma being involved, Luchi being used. What would you make of the details that are emerging there? Just a sentiment as the party, and are you happy with the investigation so far?
Well, we are involved in the investigation. We have employed private investigators. Majority of the people who are arrested were arrested through our intervention, the latest being somewhere in Witbank. It was us who said to the police, here is the person who was looking for the account of FNB so that they can transfer 500,000 into that account. You wanted someone with an account of FNB for 500,000 to be transferred so that he can cash it and then perhaps disappear or something of that sort. That was brought to our private investigation unit, and we were able to identify the culprit, the fourth suspect, and we alerted the police and we arrested the suspect. It looked like something that had to do with the ritual. And therefore, I will not be personally shocked when there is Muti involved and all manner of things, because the way they were stepping her body and her breast and all manner of things, it was now going beyond the issues of just murder and rape. It had to do with something that people are obsessed with. And we are hoping to get the truth. And the only thing that will satisfy us is if these people are all arrested, because the only missing puzzle in the whole thing is how she got captured. We know that when she arrived at the lodge, what happened and all manner of things, but from the shops to how she got captured and how she arrived at the lodge and who captured her, that detail is still missing, and that's what we are on top of. The police are doing everything in their power, working with us to make sure that we bring this matter to its finality. We need the quickest, like the one of Tseofats. The reason why we are happy with the Tseofats one is because it was quick and we're able to find justice when the matter was still fresh. We don't want justice delayed, because even if they were to be found guilty and sentenced for lifetime after 5 years, it will not feel the same. We want it to be done now. And the sooner we arrest everybody who's involved and we start the trial, the better. Let's focus on the real culprit and not on shenanigans that are not going to take us anywhere. The family is still grieving. The family is still in a difficult situation. They are still in shock. The father every morning tries to find the answers, and we hope they will find those answers very soon. Next. Yes, sir.
Mr. Malema, this is Junior Kumalo from News 24. I just wanted to ask a question with regards to a legal opinion that has been sent to Parliament, which says that parliamentarians can start dealing with the Zondo Commission reports that have already come out. What are your thoughts on that? Because the Speaker had said that she's going to wait for the President before that is dealt with.
Well, to wait for President is a demonstration of lack of understanding of separation of powers, because what Parliament does has got nothing to do with what the executive does, and therefore Parliament can commence its work on Zondo Commission's report. But there is nothing exciting to the EFF about Zondo Commission's report, because Zondo used the Commission to further the interest of a certain faction against the other faction, and by so doing delegitimized the whole process. 2 billion to fight factional battles. We have no appetite at all to entertain a Zondo Commission report. Where there are obvious matters of corruption which we have been seized with, we will continue to pursue those matters without a referral to Zondo Commission, because to us Zondo is neither here nor there. He used that for personal reward. He used that to serve the interest of a faction, and that's why there is a general confusion in the whole thing. So, and he seems to be obsessed with the younger generation, which must lead this country in the future. I mean, if you read the findings on Zizi Godwa, they are so shocking that he says there is nothing that has been placed before him that implicates Zizi Godwa or confirms that Zizi used his position to influence anything. But in his conclusion then says to the President, you need to review your position on Zizi Godwa's position. But why is he not saying anything about Gwedemantash in relation to the President reviewing his position on Gwedemantash? You can see he's pursuing ageism, factionalism, and some other issues that are not in the best interest of judiciary. What about Thaba Makwetla, for instance? What about Nomvula Mkwenyane, for instance? So there is something that he's pursuing which is not in the best interest of justice, but to satisfy certain issues that are outside what he has to do. And when I questioned him in the Judicial Service Commission interviews for Chief Justice, I said, why are you obsessed with this young man who was working in an NGO, who was not in government? Yet you leave Fraser, who was implicated in billions of rands, who was a DG of intelligence. You don't call him, you have nothing to say about him. Fraser says to you, call me, I'm ready to come and share light with you. And you still don't call him. But there's this Zizi Godwa who was nothing in government. Even when you talk of holding position in the ANC, has got potential of influencing state organs. Let's say that is an acceptable reason why you are going after him. Gwede held more powerful position than Zizi when he was in the ANC. He was the Secretary General, and Zizi was something there without portfolio, and he's being pursued. But the person who had the position of power as a Secretary General of the ANC and got cameras from Busasa installed in his house, the president is not being asked to re-look into his position in relation to Gwede Mantashe. So we don't want to be part of pursuing certain factional battles in the name of Zondo Commission. Where there is obvious corruption, we have done that before, we'll continue to do that. We will take those battles and make sure that the corrupt are exposed. We don't need Zondo. Yes, next. Bob. Second bite.
Yebo mnumzane, sishaya nje ngamafuphi. Sizwe mnumzane ukuthi njenge EFF sanike nakhuluma yini, or have you had any contact with Takatso Consortium, because they may be seemingly unhappy with the stance that you are taking with regards to nullifying their deal? Have they tried to contact you? What has happened and transpired thus far?
Well, we have no interest in meeting Takalo or having any exchange with them. It's not our business to do that. It doesn't matter what form of a transaction they engaged in. Even if it was corrupt-free and every process, every little detail was followed, we'll still oppose it as the EFF, because we oppose the privatization of the SAA. The principal stand is the privatization of SAA, and therefore are not willing to meet any private company that says we are justifiable to buy the SAA, because we believe the SAA should not be for sale. Bob.
Just a quick one, very short. The public protector's impeachment in Parliament, your response to this, or should I say your reaction to that?
Well, public protector is still in court to oppose some of the processes that must be followed by both the president and Parliament. And therefore, we think that the committee should postpone until these matters are settled in Parliament. There is no need to be in a hurry, especially when you are dealing with matters of that nature. It is important that every little aspect is satisfied, so that the outcomes of that Parliament process is not questioned by anyone. If a public protector is delaying deliberately, trying to make sure that her term of office expires before Parliament could hear the matter, she's denying herself justice, because through that process she can be able to deal with some of the allegations that are put against her. I don't care how many cases did a public protector lose. You cannot fire a public protector for losing cases. There are a lot of judges, including sitting judges, who are specializing with cases that are overturned by higher courts. Some of them even continue to apply for higher courts when they specialize with being overturned, and they still get appointed to be judges of the higher courts when their judgments have been overturned by higher courts. It doesn't make them lesser judges, because our laws are very clear. If the public protector rules and doesn't rule in your favor, you've got a recourse. And if that recourse is there, why do we become crybabies? She must be taken on review, and her reports must be set aside. And her report must be sustained by a court if they are properly researched and investigated. So I've got no crisis from where I'm sitting. I'm not saying she's the best of the best, but to want to remove her on the basis that her rulings were overturned, not because she's incompetent. She's going to give you thousands of cases she dealt with, and you find that the cases where she was overruled are 5 out of 10,000 cases. Maybe 5 cases she was overruled. What will be the basis of saying she's incompetent? Of 10,000 cases, only 5 is overruled. Because the 5 include Cyril Ramaphosa. What is so special about Cyril Ramaphosa that Cyril Ramaphosa must not be investigated and rulings must not be made against him? He can go to hell. He must be investigated. The public protector must rule against him. Like all of us, he must take public protector for a review. And if he's got a case, they will set aside public protectors' rulings, and life must go on. Life shouldn't stop. The public protector's office should not be destroyed because public protector found against Cyril Ramaphosa. Who's Cyril Ramaphosa? A man with questionable credentials. A man whose it is alleged that he was collaborating with the apartheid police. What is so? He's not a highly decorated freedom fighter. Cyril has got questionable political credentials. To even think that we must destroy public protector for a questionable character like Cyril and destroy the office for Cyril. We can't do that even for Nelson Mandela. Worse for Cyril. Next. Done. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and the people of South Africa.
Oh, the EFF, they have executed their media briefing, taking questions very quickly and answering them very succinctly. Julius Malema talking about